In the cold wind of Christmas December 13, 2009 Holy Bridge, Utah holiday lights hang on the street corner, but there is also an unsolved mystery. Stephen Kotcher evaporated from the world on this winter morning. His disappearance has led to a lot of speculation. Some say he committed a crime, some say he committed suicide because he lost his job, some say he eloped with another missing woman, and his story is like frozen air waiting to be revealed. Watch the video step into this Christmas mystery to see which one has the highest odds. Stephen moved to St. George in the spring of 2009 and left Salt Lake City with ambition and plans, where he worked at the Salt Lake City Tribune, which won the Pulitzer Prize and other awards. He worked there for 2 years, but the night hours were unbearable because the schedule meant he had to sit at his desk between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. the next morning. So he submitted his resignation in early 2009 and ushered in a turning point in his life. In April, he got a job in a marketing company in St. George's. He writes about communication science, and the new work seems like a match made in heaven for him. Stephen's spare time is full of music and writing his own songs, and he is passionate about what he expects from his new life. Stephen, 30, maintains a strong connection with his family in a small city. Although he moved to his new home, he remained close to his 4 siblings. Their home is only 8 miles away from St. George's. In St. George's, he quickly integrated into the new religious community, here referred to as LDS. He even spent months in Brazil as a missionary for the LDS Church and learned Portuguese. Stephen was actively involved in St. George's LDS group as a mentor to other members and coach of youth sports teams, but the only thing missing was love. He expects to find true love and a desire to start his own family, which is very important to his faith. By participating in the simple activities of the UDS Church, he hopes to find a like-minded partner. 2009 was supposed to be the best year of Stephen's life, with a new job, new friends, and a new home. However, the good fortune did not last long, and just a month later, he received a letter of dismissal, lost his job, and began looking for a new job in the Holy Bridge district. But due to the impact of the 2009 world economic crisis, he found the job market unexpected. In the Holy Bridge drama, he could only find part-time publicity work distributing flyers for a cleaning company. Occasionally, he worked as a prop assistant for the band, but the income from that work wasn't enough to support his expenses. He had little savings left. In mid-November, his roommate Jordan moved out due to a conflict with his landlord, Brad, which left Stephen with the entire rent. In the winter, Stephen helped some citizens decorate Christmas lights to earn extra income, but he still can't solve his financial difficulties. His parents noticed his difficulties, and his grandmother wanted to help him, and gave him a check at a family reunion so that he could get through it for a while, but Stephen never cashed it. At the end of the year, the landlord even called his parents directly to inform him that Stephen hadn't paid his rent for 3 months, and that he was in arrears in 4 figures. The parents offered to pay the bills for him, but Stephen insisted he could solve the problem and hung up. For this 30-year-old man, there seems to be no way out of reality, and his heart is as dark and gloomy as this solar term. The only constant, however, is his faith. In early December, Stephen attended a small Christmas party that seemed to be the same as usual, but a few days later, he began to behave unusually. Although not directly revealed, these actions are fraught with mystery in hindsight, given the fact that he lost wind in mid-December. We'll follow Stephen's final journey trying to understand what he ultimately wants to do. On December 10th, Stephen drove to Salt Lake City that day, stopping at a gas station in the morning to refuel, and then continuing on to Nevada. Arrive at Rupee Ranch in the afternoon with the aim of going to terminate the contract. Unexpectedly, he showed up at the door of his ex-girlfriend's parents' house without prior notice, and his ex-girlfriend was not home that afternoon, so he had to have lunch with his parents. He said he was visiting relatives on the way, and he learned that it was a lie because Stephen didn't have any relatives over there. After the visit, he returned to St. George's. Stops at gas stations in Springville and Salt Lake City on the way. Then I talked to my mother on the phone and learned that my mother had transferred money to him to pay the rent. And promised to go home for Christmas to celebrate. At around 11 p.m. on December 10th, he drove back to his home in St. George's. He drove more than 1,000 kilometers that day, seemingly just to spend 2 hours with his ex-girlfriend's parents, and what he did that day and why he lied to his parents is still a mystery. On the morning of December 12th, Stephen's phone again showed that he was in Austin, Nevada, but what he did there, we don't know. At 4 p.m. that day, he shopped at a gas station in Mesquite, Nevada, and bought some snacks. Viscuit is located between Overton and St. George's, and it looks like he was preparing to go home that afternoon. This is consistent with his shopping for Christmas decorations at a supermarket in St. George's around 8 p.m. At about 10 p.m., the neighbor saw Stephen come home, but he said that Stephen only stayed home for 20 or 30 minutes and then went out again. But where he went, no one knows. December 13th, the day Stephen really disappeared. At about 7:50 a.m., someone in his teaching group called him and asked him to attend a service in his place. But he said he was in Las Vegas, and if he really needed him, he could drive back to St. George. But members of the church community did not insist. 10:30 another church member called and asked if he would show up at the noon service, and Stephen again refused on the grounds that he was in Las Vegas. That was the last person to talk to Stephen. It wasn't until a few days later that Stephen's disappearance came to the fore. On December 15th, residents of Henveen noticed that an outside vehicle had been parked in the same place for 2 days, which was unusual because it was a gated community where mostly retirees lived. In this area, people know each other, they live in each other's cars, and Stephen's car is never seen. Through the windows of the car, residents could see the flyers that Stephen had distributed to the cleaning company, and they decided to call the company and ask why the car had been parked in Henderson for 2 days. Stephen's boss, who knows nothing about Stephen's Las Vegas plot, tries to contact Stephen himself but can't respond. So the boss contacted Stephen's mother, but he couldn't get in touch with his son, and the mother couldn't explain why Stephen had come to Las Vegas on his own, because the city was very restrictive, and he didn't get involved in any drugs, and he didn't even smoke or drink. The family completely ruled out the possibility that Stephen might go to Las Vegas for a party, and out of concern they called the police on December 15th to say that Stephen was missing. During this period, Stephen's father traveled to Henderson to find out the whole situation. On the way, he stops at the Holy Bridge play, where one of Stephen's brothers has a spare key to his apartment. When they stepped into the apartment, everything looked normal, the apartment was tidy, Stephen's personal belongings seemed to be in the car, there were Christmas gifts he bought at St. George's supermarket, and a couple of receipts from the gas station, pillows, plates, shaving tools, and plenty of copies of job application materials. But Stephen's phone, wallet and ID card were missing, and then Stephen's entire family arrived in Henderson and began searching for the 30-year-old. Stephen's father knocked door to door asking residents for footage from security cameras in the hope of finding clues about Stephen. The residents were also very cooperative, and it paid off quickly. Surveillance footage shows Stephen's vehicle entering the street at about 11:15 a.m. and the driver sat in the car for a while and left the vehicle at about 12 o'clock. The person who got out of the car was probably Tiffin Sue, who not only looked like him, but also had a gait that was strikingly similar to that of the missing person. In the picture, Sue Typhon seems to be alone. He had something under his arm, and then he walked resolutely towards the Evan condensation realm. After that, Stephen disappeared into the secluded neighborhood and was never heard from again. After Christmas, the police intervened to find Stephen, posted missing person notices everywhere, search dogs participated in the search, and the police visited every house in Henderson. The search lasted 4 days, and despite the intensity of the search, nothing was found. The initial thought of the Stephen family and the police was that Stephen might have no chance of survival. His car was full of application papers, which seemed to show Stephen's desperation to find a new job. Because he was obviously carrying his ID card, probably from Las Vegas, to end his life in a foreign country, he also left behind Christmas gifts for his nephews and promised his mother to come home at Christmas. On the morning of December 13th, he also called 2 members of the church and was happy to tell them that he was in Las Vegas. If he wants to end his life there in peace, why would he reveal his location? He even offered to the first person to call that he could drive back to St. George's to help with church work. None of these circumstances seemed to fit the suicide theory, so the conjecture was quickly abandoned in favor of a growing belief that Stephen might have committed a crime. Even though Stephen's family had offered to help him, he apparently wanted to take matters into his own hands, and he didn't use his grandmother's checks, and he didn't accept money from his mother. As for the part-time jobs, one can't help but wonder if there are any jobs that are going wrong. Stephen may have met some people in Las Vegas who made shady business proposals. And that would at least explain why, in the days leading up to his disappearance, he drove long distances. In the ending, Stephen may have been on his way to his ex-girlfriend's house, and the next day, he might have handled something for someone, and if that's true, it's strange why no one reported seeing him do something out of the ordinary. There is another notable figure in the case of Stephen's former roommate Jordan who revealed some relevant information in an interview. Jordan stated that their landlord, Brad, was a weirdo who would often show up unannounced in the house where Jordan and Stephen lived. And for the garage attached to this house, only Brad has access. He said Brad would be there for hours, often at very odd times. Jordan also hinted that Brad had a large number of weapons hidden in his house. When questioned by the police, Brad was relaxed, and even though Stephen owed him 3 months' rent, Brad was still confident that he would get the money one day. After all, even if it's a landlord who goes to his property and garage on his own many times, it's not illegal, and it's not illegal to possess a weapon in the United States. Here the clue is interrupted again. And in the same state where Stephen Kotcher disappeared, there's another case in Utah, where Susan, a mother of 2, and her child, who is the same age as Stephen, also went missing. Susan and Stephen's accommodation is about a 5-hour drive away. However, data from Stephen's phone shows that during the week he lost lockdown, he sometimes stayed in Simali, the city where Susan lost lockdown on December 6, 2009. In February 2010, Susan's announcement found something similar to Susan's disappearance in Stephen Kotcher's disappearance, and he immediately contacted the investigating agency. He submits a detailed document to Furbureau, in which he sets out his theory, and he speculates that Stephen and the missing Susan met at the church and began an affair. Then they decided to elope. Maybe even went to Brazil, where Stephen worked as a missionary for a while. He also said that if one of them is found, the other is likely to be found. But this is not confirmed, because many people suspect that Susan's husband and father-in-law have killed Susan and her children. Susan's father-in-law was prosecuted for child obscenity and voyeurism and accused of harassing Susan, and Stephen's disappearance was nothing more than an excuse to distract them. Stephen Kotcher's disappearance is like an unfinished drama that leaves too much suspense and unsolved mystery. In these areas of suspicion, every detail can be the key to unlocking the truth. How do you interpret these signs? Stephen's reflection: what does the pull between ideal and reality teach you? Please share your understanding and views with us. Participate in this unfinished story.